Hey guys, it's John from Dragonfly Computers here, and here we finally arrived at the day. It's been weeks since I've gotten an upload up, and my apologies. I have tried to film this video probably 5 or 6 separate times, and I've just been dreading this because I just can't seem to get it right. I have so much information I'm trying to get across, and I'm having trouble categorizing it and expressing it in a way that doesn't sound ridiculous, as well as doesn't overload the user with so much information that it becomes too much to kind of bear. This is a companion video to the one that the hated one made. In fact, it's kind of a companion video to most of his videos because he's covering a lot of the same topics that I want to cover. He's just does it in a way more accessible way than I do and has a much bigger audience. So I'm going to suggest some of his videos as we go. But basically, let's just start at the start here. What I'm going to do is refresh your memory on some concepts that you probably remember but maybe have forgotten in the meantime. And then also we're going to be covering this website here, privacytools.io, because there's just so much awesome information on this website and can really help you. What the whole goal of this is to kind of just introduce, some of this is backed up by, news stories at mainstream media outlets. Some of it is backed up by things that aren't so mainstream. Others of it is me just kind of interjecting my personal opinion based on the research I've done and the fact that I, work in this industry. So you're going to have to pick and choose like anybody else that you listen to. You're going to have to pick and choose what you like, what you care about. And, if you think something's far-fetched or is crazy, then fine, ignore it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just trying to get the information out there. And then, you can feel free to sound off in the comments if you have a disagreement or you think I'm off base on something. So let's get back to the concept of this video, which is going to be the social media surveillance state, their ties, and how I believe that people in between their browsing habits and their usage of social media and their usage of smartphones are just not only giving up so much information in terms of their own privacy, but at the same time, I don't think they quite realize how it's really being used. And this is where my video kind of could go off on the deep end a little bit in some people's opinion. I think other people are going to see exactly where I'm coming from and probably agree with it pretty well. But that being said, let's turn the clocks back to 2013 when the Edward Snowden revelations came out. And if you remember, what happened then was, let's see, come back up here. Sorry, I've closed this page and brought it up so many times now. We learned about Project Prism. And this is from the Washington Post. So you remember this was huge news for a while, and then it quickly got forgotten about. And then people that pay attention to this stuff will instantly remember exactly what this is all about. But then a lot of people I think have forgotten or maybe never heard about it. So I don't know what people know. So I'm just going to recover some of this other stuff, and then hopefully I'm going to add some things to it that are interesting to you. So basically, what we have here is, all of your social media. It's just a diagram where you're looking at all your social media, all the providers, Gmail, Facebook, Yahoo, Hotmail, Google, Skype, and they're all owned by a couple of providers. You got Apple here, you got AOL here, which is, I forget who bought them, but it's like CBS or Comcast, I think, bought them. Comcast Universal. You have, YouTube, Google, that's all under Alphabet, right? Like ABC, FBI, CIA. Then you have Gmail is another one, of course, and then Facebook was it's self-explanatory. So all of these mainstream providers who host most of the internet, I mean, most of the sites that people interact with on a daily basis fall under the umbrella of one of these companies. And basically, what we learned in Project Prism is that they're just sending it all to the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, whatever it is. I don't know exactly how it's working. I just know that, this is what supposedly came out in the Snowden leaks, okay? So you can take that for what it's worth. Then we have the NSA, oh, Jesus, here we go with this, right? Shut off. The NSA surveillance programs. Now, this is a more recent article from about a year ago where they talk about that none of this stuff has stopped. And this is over at CNET. None of this stuff has stopped. If anything, it's probably gotten a lot worse. In addition to that, now here's another, this is a great article that was on the Intercept. Now, actually, let me jump back to privacy tools for a minute. At the if you go to privacytools.io, there is a quote at the very top that was from a TED Talk, a guy named Glenn Greenwald. Now, he runs this site, the Intercept, and we're going to get back to this in a second. He was a big part of the Snowden thing when it happened. But we go back, and you get this quote here. You can read it yourself. But basically what he talks about is he was given a TED Talk, and people say, well, I don't do anything wrong, so I've got nothing to hide. And he always asks for volunteers to say, who would like to give me all their all their passwords to all their social media and all their email? I just want to rummage through it and see if I can find anything. And of course, nobody ever takes him up on that offer. So his outfit, the Intercept, regardless of what you think of him, wrote a very, very interesting piece. And this came out in 2018, so it's only about a year old. This is about a 6,600 word piece, complete with locations and photos, and you can see all the buildings here, okay? And basically the concept of this is that AT&T, which has been around forever, right? And that was the old Bell companies, I believe, right? I mean, I could be wrong about that, but let's just say AT&T is a very well-known telecom company that's been around forever. A lot of the backbone of there are some people that surmise that anything that any information that travels over the internet in the United States travels over one of their backbones at some point or another. And we see here that they've got 8 different data centers, and in each of these data centers, there's an NSA room that you're not allowed to get into, that the employees aren't allowed to get into. And this piece goes on to document all of this. And it has the addresses, it has pictures of the rooms, it has the exact concept. Basically, what they're saying is that they're copying all internet traffic, all of it. And you know, whether or not they can decrypt VPN traffic or whatever is only up for speculation. I don't know. I'd recommend that you read the piece, and I'm putting a lot of different pieces together here, so a lot of different concepts together here, because we're heading somewhere with this. And then there was an article from, and then this is from this week. This article is April 18th, 2019. Today is April 23rd, 2019. So we've got an article here about the FBI's facial recognition programs under fire, you know, okay, right. And I'm sure this is just a sort of, you know, hey, we're doing something about privacy type piece. And this was in nextgov.com, right? I don't care about this. I'm bringing this up to bring this. Where do you think the FBI gets their facial recognition data from? What website has 1 billion users and has facial recognition so refined that it can now, if you've ever been tagged in a picture, it will automatically find you in any picture that has ever been taken and posted by anybody else, and they can instantly tag you in those pictures? Yeah, I know you know what I'm talking about here, which is Facebook. And you don't even have to read the stories. You just look, I mean, you can simply just Google or use whatever search engine you want and talk, just all I did, Facebook's facial recognition database, and it brings up this host of stories from Forbes, from USA Today, from Off the Grid News, from Mashable, Gizmodo, NPR. You know, across the spectrum, you have prepper sites, you have left-wing sites, you have right-wing sites, you have, you know, ostensibly centrist business style websites that all talk about the extensive usage of Facebook's facial recognition database. Now, I finally deleted my Facebook account, which is a video that I made a month ago that I haven't posted because I felt like it was out of context with the other stuff I was doing. I will probably post it in conjunction with this video finally and get it up there. But what we're talking about here is again, to get back, we're talking about data collection. And we're eventually going to get to how you can do something about, like, how you can lessen your footprint, your data footprint from, let's say, like a tank driving through a wheat field to more of, you know, tiptoeing through, you know, a dark alley, I guess is what it comes down to. Because there's never going to be any anonymity with this. You can only, you know, lessen your footprint, okay, is what we're going to. So let me keep going before I lose my train of thought. Now we have the Stingray cell towers. Now this is something that when I bring it up to people, and again, we get the Washington Post here, but you know, you can find information about this on any website. I actually used to blog about this on dragonflycomputers.com, and it got to the point where I was getting far more traffic about Stingray cell towers than I was about anything to do with my IT consulting business. So I actually deleted all the blogs because unless I was just going to blog exclusively about these kinds of issues, and which is kind of what I'm trying to use the YouTube platform for. It was like hijacking my own website. I was almost like working against myself. So what? And this is something that when I bring it up to people, like when I bring it up to mainstream people that have never heard of it, they think I'm talking junk. But this is a real thing, and it's been going on for a long time. So what a Stingray device is, and you're looking at one on the screen here, is a fake cell phone tower that up until recently, both police, sheriffs, federal agencies were able to use without a warrant. Eventually, people caught up with this, and it was taken to court, and now it looks like both police, municipals, and I know for a fact the feds have to get a warrant now to use these things. But for years, they were able to use them without a warrant, and it was all because of people's ignorance on the subject. And what they are is a fake cell phone tower. This is my understanding of it. So what it does is they bring it into an area and they flip it on, and what it does is because the way a cell phone works is they triangulate. Your cell phone is talking to 3 cell phone towers at any given time. That's how they, quote, triangulate your position. So when somebody gets lost in the woods, or somebody becomes a missing person, and they triangulate where their last cell phone signal was, and they can do it within inches. It's very accurate. So, and that has nothing to do with GPS. That's just strictly on cell phone traffic alone. So at any given time, your cell phone is talking to 3 different cell towers at once. That's the way it's supposed to work. So then you have these things which are fake cell phone towers. So they drive them into an area in the back of a van or whatever, and your cell phone starts talking to this, thinking it's a cell phone tower, only it's not. And what it does is it bumps you down. I mean, these things came out in, I started reading about them in 2012. So what are we in 2019 now? So I remember reading about these things in 2012, maybe even as early as 2011. And back then we were in 2G and 3G. 3G was the new kid on the block back then. And what they would do is they would bust your cell phone down to, I think, a 1G signal, which was easily decrypted. So I think it's still the case where 3G and 4G are considered secure. So what they do is once they get your cell phone talking to this device, they bump it down to a 2G or a 1G signal, and then they're able to decrypt that very easily. Because all your phones, any 4G phone can still do 3G, 2G, and 1G communications. Again, that's my understanding of how they work. And the problem is when they go into an area, they can't discriminate. So when they flip one of these things on, they get all the cell phone traffic in a given area. Now, in a city block, that could be a lot of traffic. And they can't discriminate. So let's say they're targeting one person. They may be getting hundreds of people's conversations and data communications all at once. So why does that matter? Well, let's say they flip it on and it turns out that, they're searching for person X, but over the course of that, they find out person Y is doing a drug deal or doing, something, I don't know, they don't like something against the law. Well, then they can say, well, okay, well, now we've got this guy on our radar, let's go after him. And it violates the Fourth Amendment along with a million other things. So anyway, I just want you to be aware of it. It's another thing that you should just know about, and then you can do your own research. I don't believe that there's much that you can do about these things other than just know that they exist and prepare accordingly. And then the last thing that is, well, not the last thing, but one other thing I want to mention. It's just something that I find interesting, and I can't really, I've been trying to do my own research on this, and, among other things, there's only so much that you can come up with, but it's just an interesting thing. So we talk about Google as the ultimate data collection company between Gmail and between, Google Ads and all the other, the ad networks they run, the analytics they get from YouTube, Google Analytics for another thing, which almost every website runs, and they collect the usage data of, all of it. Part of it, it's a free tool, and so part of it is what you're giving up when you install Google Analytics on your website is, they get to collect all that data and use it however they see fit, right? So forget about all of that stuff. We're not even going to talk about it. This is about 23andMe, and this is actually their privacy their privacy terms here, their terms of service and their privacy policy, which I actually spent about half a day. I read every word of these, and we're going to get back to it in a second. So why does this matter? So this was just an interesting connection that I came across. So there's three sisters here. One of them is a former Google executive, I believe it's Susan, is a former Google executive, and she is now the CEO of YouTube. And then you have the other sister who is the founder, one of the co-founders. Anne is one of the co-founders and CEO of 23andMe, which is a very popular genetic information. You send them a sample, and then they send you back your genetic information that goes along with it, right? So again, giving up your most valuable, the piece of information that is the most unique in regards to you and your family, and not only that, but paying for the privilege. And then they're able to collect that data. Now, what they're doing with it, is there any connection there? I don't know. You tell me. I go through their terms of service. So there was some videos out there that was saying that that they reserve the right to sell it to third parties. And all I could find as I went through the terms of service and the privacy policy was this, is that unless you explicitly give them permission. Now, I don't know if when you fill, because I would never do this, but if you fill this out, I don't know if there's a little checkbox that if you don't check the box off, then you're explicitly giving them permission. If that's the case, then that's super sketchy. I don't know that that's the case because, like I said, I would never go through this process, so I'm not going to. But the other thing that they do reserve the right to sell the information, but only after they depersonalize it. So basically what they're doing is they may sell the information and say, oh, well, all of our, 30-year-old female respondents, 30% of them had X, trait or whatever common amongst them. In that case, I don't really have a problem with that. I just think that it's interesting is that on one hand, you have Google, which is one of probably the premier data collection company on the planet that's ever been created. And then you have this connection with 23andMe, which is collecting all of this genetic information on people all over the world. And at the same time, there's a connection there that you have two sisters that run the two companies. So anyway, it's just interesting. It's something that maybe you want to look into. So, as we get through some of this stuff here, we're going to go back to privacy tools here. So I told you all that to tell you this. Here's this website. Now, this is in direct conjunction with the Hated Ones video about trying to decrease your footprint online. So I'm going to go through some of the stuff on this website and give you my own 2 cents, as being that I work in the IT industry and I know how to implement a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to go through some of it here and talk about it, and then we'll see where that takes us. So I had a whole script. I had about a 2,000 word script. I got it sitting on my other screen here. I literally haven't even looked at it once yet. And nothing I just covered was in the script. So I literally have probably another 20-minute video sitting here on this screen that I don't even think I'm going to touch on. So that's why this video has been so hard to make. And there's people that have done a better job. I'm doing my best, guys. It's all I can do. Is I just want to kind of be a canary in the coal mine. Another one. There's plenty of them out there. But I think if enough people hear this information from enough places, they may start to second guess how much they want to share on social media, or if they even want to have it at all, and how to reduce their footprint, which is all I'm trying to accomplish with this video. So the first thing that people should know about is the 5 eyes, the 9 eyes, and the 14 eyes. And I'm just going to summarize this in like 2 sentences. It's basically some of the most industrialized countries, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, United States, Denmark, France, Netherlands, Norway, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Spain, Sweden. So what does this mean? These are countries that have agreements to essentially spy on their own citizens if they need to circumvent their own country's laws. So if country A, if one of the countries in this network says, oh, I really want to spy on this guy, but I can't because the law says I can't, they'll say, hey, Canada, can you spy on this guy for me and then share the information with me? That's essentially what it comes down to. You can do your own research on that. It's something that if you're at all concerned about privacy, it's something you should know about. This, they're talking about key disclosure laws. I have not familiarized myself with these laws all that much. So unfortunately, I don't have a lot to add. I mean, there's plenty of resources here. It's just more than I can even cover in this video. But then we're going to talk about VPNs. Now, this is actually quite a bit what I had on my thing here, but I'm not even going to get into it. VPNs, you have to make a decision on your own. One of the things that I really do want to cover about VPNs is just to, dispel some myths. It's not that there aren't other sites that have done this, but just for people that are wondering, when you make a VPN connection, you're making an encrypted connection to a server, and for all intents and purposes, without getting into the technical explanations, you're kind of surfing the web from the signature of that server from now on. So if I'm in Massachusetts and I connect to a VPN server in Paris, all the websites that I visit from that point on think I'm sitting in Paris instead of sitting in Massachusetts. That's the long and short of it. You can have VPNs without encryption, but most VPNs that you're going to pay for are going to have the encryption piece of it, because that's the whole advantage of it, is that it encrypts your connection, so it keeps the information that's traveling across that connection secure. But ultimately, there's two things. So there is sort of a myth that people think that if they're on a VPN, that that they're safe, they're anonymous, they're anonymously browsing the web. Nothing could be further from the truth there. You're actually, in a way, everything can be tracked directly to you via that connection, because you're logged into a VPN server. So this whole thing about no logs, okay? Now, the question is, if you're connected to a VPN service that says that they don't keep logs, then in all possibilities, let's say, you get on, you connect to a torrent, you download, I don't know, Game of Thrones or something. And of course, there's all these law firms out there that are looking at anyone connected to a torrent, and then they go back to that IP address, thinking that it's your ISP or whatever, and say, hey, they send you a DMCA request that tells you, you're going to get fined, or you're going to have your internet connection shut off if you continue to do this kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. But if you connect via a VPN, it's their IP address that shows up in that torrent string. So when the DMCA request comes out, it's going to go to one of these VPN providers that controls these IP addresses, and then they may say, oh, well, we have no idea who that was. Because we don't keep logs or whatever. Now, a couple of things that I would caution you on that is read the fine print. Every one of these VPNs comes along with a huge fine print where in a lot of cases they tell you that they do keep logs, but I'm just going to tell you how VPNs work, because I've set many VPNs up, VPN tunnels between firewalls, between client to firewall connections. I've set up global VPN networks between different kinds of firewall providers and all the rest of it. It's what I used to do in corporate America. And I'm just going to tell you that VPNs do not work without logging. If you are paying for a VPN service, they're going to tell you, oh, well, you can only log in with one device at a time, or maybe 3 devices at a time, or 6 devices at a time. Well, how would they be able to tell how many devices you were logged in with if they're not keeping logs of that? Also, how can you log in? How are you going to log into the VPN without a log of that happening? It's not even possible. It actually wouldn't function without log. So all VPNs, all of them, 100% of them are logging information. They would not work without that. So you can take that to the bank. That is a fact that is indisputable. So whether or not they share whether or not they're tracking where you browse, and they share that information if a lawyer comes knocking, or a law enforcement agency comes knocking, that's where there is some debate amongst the different VPN providers. But in terms of, is there a log of your activity? Yes, absolutely, 100%. There is no anonymity with a VPN connection. So bearing that in mind, what you want to do if you're going to use a VPN connection is to choose one that does not reside in one of the 14 I's countries. That's all I'm trying to get at here. So you're going to have to make your own decision on this, and I'm not affiliated with any VPNs. I don't have any stake in this game. I'm just going to tell you that this is a nice list right here of VPNs that reside outside of the 14 I's countries. And you can use this list as a starter list, or you can choose one of these, or you can continue. There's lots of linked articles here where you can read more about VPN providers. and if you would want to use one. So the nice thing about a VPN of why you would want to use one is that, yeah, it does encrypt that connection. So what that means is among all the other people that spy on everything you do while you're online, your ISP is also very interested in where you're going because they also want to advertise to you and sell your information and all the rest of it. So one way to cut your ISP out of the mix is to encrypt your connection, which is what you would use a VPN for, and also to keep your web browsing habits. I mean, a nice thing, on my phone, I noticed that because I keep a VPN, I keep my phone 24 hours a day connected to a VPN, and I notice it breaks a lot of things. Even on my computer, it breaks a lot of the things you'd want it to break. It breaks your connection to Microsoft. It breaks your connection to like Adobe Creative Cloud. It breaks your connection on my phone. It breaks the connection to Siri, and it breaks a lot of those connections. So that makes me think that a lot of the automated tools on your machines that are collecting a lot of data about you actually break when you have a VPN connection going, because a lot of them block VPN connections. So like Office 365 is another one that you can't sign into your Office 365 account while you have, at least the one I use, the VPN. It won't work. So in a way, that's actually a lot. There's a lot of good things there, but you have to trust the one that you go with. So we've spent 5 minutes on it now. So that's what I want to talk about there. And then you have to do your own research and make your own decision on that. But that is why you would want to use one. Of course, you're not going to use it for illegal activities, and it's a bad thing to use. So the other alternative besides that is the Tor browser. I'm not a huge fan of Tor. That runs on a completely different protocol. It's on a completely different network. It breaks a lot of the functionality of the modern web. So if you want to do things, I mean, yes, you can check your email on it and stuff, but it's really hard to even browse the web with it. It may get you unnecessarily surveilled if you are just using it for fun or whatever. You may end up attracting attention you don't want to attract. If you're going to use it, I would use it in conjunction with a VPN on a laptop that you don't do anything else on, and encrypt the drive on that. And it's super slow is the other thing about it. So I'm not a huge advocate for Tor. A lot of people are, big time, Tor people. I'm not one, so I'm just going to leave it at that. What I do, this is the thing that I'm really interested in that I want to talk about is the browser Fingerprint. I have a whole nother video on WebRTC. It can leak your IP address. I have a whole video on how to shut that off on all the major browsers, so I'm just going to link it here. It's pretty easy to do. The other thing is about this is creating, and you're going to use these, and this is a thing that's covered in, this is what I really wanted to get at here, was talking about getting off of, like if you're using Gmail or you're using Hotmail, or, if you use, let's say you sign in, you have a Gmail account, and you have a Google phone, and you're signed in with that Gmail account on your computer, and you're signed in with that Gmail account on your phone. So now, essentially what you're doing is, I'm going to see if I can rattle all this off my memory. You are, Google is collecting all your location data, all your voice data in your phone. They say they don't read emails anymore, because I think it's because they don't have to, but they did at one point. They were even scanning your emails. They have all your YouTube searches, all YouTube videos you've ever watched, all your browsing history, all of your, I don't know, there's so many other pieces of data they collect. I mean, those are just the easy ones off the top of my head. And Hotmail, they do the same thing. Office 365 and, Windows phones, they have their whole ecosystem for this that is used for the same in Windows 10. I mean, geez, you get that. Apple obviously has their own ecosystem. I believe that they're a little bit more, with Apple, the data is stored on your device. With Google, the data is stored on their servers. So take that for what it's worth. That's why when you get a new iPhone, you have to, get everything back from your iTunes, your backup, but then it takes a while to learn your habits because the data actually lives on your phone and not on their servers. So having said that, this is a host of web plugins that you can use to cut down on some of the browser fingerprint for all intents and purposes. But there's even a bigger concept here, and this is this is where I almost feel like I should stop here and make a separate video. And I may end up having to do that, but I'm going to cover it here and now just because I don't want to break the continuity of it, but I may make a whole separate video just to talk about this one thing. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to get, if you want to get off of, like, let's say you have a Hotmail account or a Gmail account or an iCloud email account, and you don't want to use those anymore. The first thing you want to do is you want to get your emails out of there, because there's a privacy law here where basically anything that's left in cloud storage for more than 6 months is considered abandoned. And basically law enforcement, I think at that point, doesn't even have to get a warrant or anything. They can just, if you have stuff that's sitting in cloud storage that's over 6 months old, they pretty much have carte blanche to it. And there's a, like I said, there's a whole, this is linked actually on the Privacy Tools website as well. It's down here. Aging privacy law leaves cloud email open to cops. And there's a couple of other articles as well that you should read. But basically, so what you want to do is you want to get all of your email out of cloud storage. But the risk with that is once you download it, it lives on your computer. And what you're going to do for that is you're going to use the POP3 protocol. So let's just go back to the old days. So this is an old POP3. This is an old email protocol that isn't really in use anymore. And the reason why is because it downloads all the emails off of the email server onto the computer. And the way that's a problem is that if you have a hard drive failure, you can lose all those emails because you may lose the file that has all that stuff on there. So IMAP came along after that, which allowed people to have both, so that they could, have the data on a device, like on your computer using Outlook, or on your phone, using the email, whatever email thing you want to use on your phone to connect to email. But they also still lived on the server. They lived in both places. So if your phone died, or your computer died and you had to get a new phone or a new computer, you reconfigure your email, you get it all back. But if you're using POP and your computer dies, you lose all your emails along with it. So there is a risk there. So you have to learn how to back up those files if you care. If you decide to download all of your emails from these locations, you're now responsible for that data. So if you don't care, but if you have a lot of stuff that you really care about, maybe some old emails from a loved one who maybe is gone, or some old pictures, and the only place they live is in those emails, you're going to have to be responsible for that. And that's something I can't cover. It's way out of the scope of what I'm trying to talk about here. But just be aware. This is how you do it. So what you have to do is you have to look for POP3 settings for, Hotmail or whatever. And this even took me a while to find. It was interesting. So how do I enable Hotmail on POP? So I went through a bunch of these, and the server settings were wrong. I ended up having to go to Outlook.com through their whole thing, and I found the server settings. They've changed a bunch of times. A lot of this information is outdated. So you have to find the POP3 settings for Gmail or Hotmail or whoever. What I'm trying to say is get your email off of Google, get your email off of Comcast, get your email off of AOL, get your email off of Microsoft. Get it out of there, and then every one of those email providers, it doesn't matter if it's Yahoo, Hotmail, Gmail, any of them, they all have in their settings somewhere where you can forward emails to another address. And you can usually check off the box if you want to keep a copy on the server, on their server, or not. So what you do is you use an email client, such as, you can use Outlook, or you can use Thunderbird here, or something called Claws. I've never used Claws. I rarely have encountered Thunderbird, but they're both free. You can download them. You can configure a POP3 account to your Hotmail or Yahoo or whatever. Download all the emails out of their cloud onto your computer, then set up forwarding to forward those emails to another more privacy-focused email account. And then as people send an email to your Hotmail, it's going to bounce over to your new, whatever it's, Proton Mail or whatever. Then you can reply from there and say, hey, please notice the change. We're now using Proton Mail, or we're now using whatever. It's a little bit more than I can cover because, there's so many different providers. The things are all in the different places. You can, for whoever you're using, if you're using Hotmail or Gmail, which are two of the most common, or Outlook.com, which is the Hotmail and Live, you can just Google how to do it or search how to do it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to set up an email account with a more privacy focused, did I go past these? with a more privacy-focused email provider. And there's a whole list of them here that I'm trying to find. Here they are. Proton Mail, disroot.org, Tutanota, MailFence, mailbox.org, Postio, Runbox, Neo Mailbox, all of these different. These are much more, they're out of, some of them are out of 14 Eyes countries. They have paid services, some have some free, but they are more privacy-focused email providers. So what I would suggest you do as part of the beginning of your getting out of this is decide whether or not if you still want to have social media at all. If you don't, delete all your social media. Secondly, go to, get your email off of their ecosystems, the Gmails, the Microsofts and the Google and the other big providers. Get out of their ecosystems completely. Download the emails to your computer using POP3, using an email client to configure a POP3 connection, download all that stuff, save it, learn how to back those files up, save them. Then create an email account in a more privacy-focused provider like a Proton Mail or a Tutanota or whatever, and forward all your emails to that new account. And then when you reply to people that you care to have contacts with, you can just tell them, hey, this is my new email account, whatever. When you're comfortable that everyone has it, maybe in 6 months or a year, go back to your old Hotmail or Gmail, and then you can delete that account. So that's the beginning of it. But then the other thing that's a really, really big piece of it is the browser piece of it. And this is, again, almost more than I can cover. But what we're going to talk about here is installing some privacy plugins, but also specifically with Firefox, there's all these extra privacy settings that you can manually do. Once you do that, once you implement all this stuff in Firefox, it does become very different. It will delete all your cookies. It will only accept first-party cookies from websites. It won't allow cross-site tracking and all this other stuff. But then what ends up happening is it won't remember any of your passwords. It won't remember any of your sites that you visited or any of your history or anything like that. So what you're going to do is you're either going to use separate browsers for separate things. So you may use a browser, you may create a Proton Mail account and use, Opera for, just your work, browsing for doing LinkedIn or posting resumes or anything to do with your professional persona. Then you're going to set up your web browsing persona where you browse relevant news sites to you. You use a different email for that, you use a different browser for that. Maybe that's the one where you do all this privacy stuff on. And then you're going to make another browser for your social media. You can either create a different profile within Firefox, then you have to do all this stuff again, or you can copy it over into your new profile. And then you're going to have a different email address, and that's going to be attached to your social media. So that does three things. One, it makes you much harder to track online. Two, it allows a privacy. Sorry, lost my train of thought because my phone's ringing. It's going to, so the other thing, what it's going to do is it's going to separate your social media from your browsing habits, from your professional habits. So why that's important is because if you're searching for a job and you have a YouTube channel like this that maybe you wouldn't want a potential employer to see, or you don't want them search. What's the first thing they do? They take your email and they search your social media. So you don't want those email addresses attached to anything that can be found. So that's why you want to separate these three things: separate work, separate browsing, and separate social media. Create 3 separate email accounts for all of those. Create those email accounts within those more privacy respecting providers. Get your emails out of the cloud of Apple, Comcast, Microsoft and Yahoo and all the rest of them. Forward that stuff onto your new email accounts that you're going to create. Put these privacy settings into your browser that makes it very, very difficult to track your web browsing habits. Combine that with a VPN. And then what you're talking about at that point is really taking back a lot of your privacy if you care about this stuff. All of this stuff that I just talked about, if that stuff is at all important to you, or if you see this stuff that I see and you say to yourself, I want to disconnect from this, I still need to be able to browse the internet and communicate with people, but I want to pull back a little bit. I want to get out of this this insane data collection, how I can literally be thinking about something and then pick up my phone and get an ad for it, even though I've never searched for it and I've never talked to anybody about it. That's how predictive it's becoming. So I would say this is a great start. And I was initially going to make the video to be more technical, where I actually walk through doing some of this stuff. And if you want to see it, I can do it. But all of the instructions are right here between the video that the hated one made, this companion video, and then this website. You should be able to you should have most of the tools that you need to do this. Another thing is encrypted instant messenger. So just know this. If you're using an Apple phone, and you might notice when you send text messages, some of them are green and some of them are blue. The blue ones are encrypted. So iPhone to iPhone messages are encrypted, but iPhone to anything else is not encrypted. And then within the Google Android ecosystem, a lot of people use WhatsApp. Well, guess who owns WhatsApp? That would be Facebook. So I would say get the hell off of that if that's what you use, and try to use something like Signal. Signal's great, really easy to use. I believe you can even make phone calls over it. That's encrypted. It's open source. If it had flaws, everybody would know about it by now. So I would say think about using something like Signal. I've never used Riot or Ricochet, but those are some other encrypted messengers that you can use. So just know that all of your text messages, unless they're iPhone to iPhone, all of your text messages are in plain text. So what that means is anybody that's snooping around what you're doing can read what you're sending in those text messages as they go back and forth. So you can take that for what it's worth. I personally like privacy. It goes back to that original quote back up here at the beginning, where not a single person has taken me up on my offer to go through all of their stuff. I think that if you go through people's stuff enough, you can pretty much get them for anything. And, you can find. There was a famous. I don't know who it was. Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime. I forget who it was. I don't know if it was. They can get you on anything if they want. So stop making it easy. What else are we going to talk about here? I think I'm just about to wrap this up. Search engines, good luck with that. I mean, the problem is, I hate to say it, but, Google, for as much as they control information, if you're looking for technical, especially in the IT world, if you need technical fixes, there's just no alternative. There's no other search engine that comes close. I would say, the problem is with the search engines, DuckDuckGo and these other ones, they're just not as good, the search results. So, if you're searching for something that you don't care much about, you can use these, but I hate to say it, but I've become very dependent on Google, and I'd love to get off of it, but I just don't see a viable alternative right now. So for what I do, I just know that those search results are extremely controlled. They are extremely what's the word I'm looking for? Curated. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Encrypted instant messenger. The last thing is cloud storage. Now I pay for a separate business cloud storage that's encrypted and everything. So it's part of what I do in my day job. So, I would leave this stuff up to you. You'll have to figure out one that you want to use. But your Dropboxes and stuff, that's another ecosystem you want to get off of. File encryption software. This is a big one. So you've got BitLocker that's built into Windows Pro. You can't use it in Windows Home, but you can use it in Windows Pro or Enterprise. That's really the big difference between those operating systems, is the ability to use the built-in encryption tool, which is called BitLocker. I don't really think there's a backdoor for it. If there is, then everyone is going to have it eventually. So if you just don't trust the Microsoft, definitely from the perspective of if your machine ever got stolen by your average, nobody, they're not going to be able to get through your BitLocker protection. But could a big time law enforcement agency get through it? Probably. So if you want to use something else, Veracrypt would be the one that I would recommend, that I've used many times. There's risks with this stuff. You can lose all your data. Once you encrypt your drive, you know, especially with Veracrypt, there's no support. It's open source and it's free. But once you encrypt it, you're on your own. So make sure you're comfortable with it. The encryption process itself is very easy. And it's just a matter of, you know, you set a password. It's an extra password you have to enter when you first log into your machine. Slows the login process down quite a bit, but that's also a security feature. But then the other thing is that, you know, if the headers go corrupt, like you're going to back up the headers off, you know, off to another device somewhere, because if the headers go corrupt, you have to create an emergency recovery disk, which you also have to save somewhere else, and you have to know how to use that. So, you know, there's risks with everything, but I would encourage you to encrypt everything. I encrypt everything. So again, I'll just leave it at that. There's plenty of videos how to use Veracrypt. I don't need to make one. You can find that. And there's, I think, plenty of videos on BitLocker too. Self-contained networks, desocialized social networks. Yeah, good luck. Don't bother with it, would be my advice. DNS encryption. Yeah, you know, there's other things with that. Pay services, that's something you should probably know about too, but I'm not going to cover it right now. You know, we're hitting the 45-minute mark. I doubt many people are going to even watch this video this far. Open source router firmware is something to look at. pfSense and WRT. You can get some interesting devices that aren't very expensive that serve as firewalls and routers that you can run pfSense on, and it's free. Plenty of videos on that. I don't do that. I use different stuff, but it's something that I would look at. For Windows 10 privacy, I do have videos on that. A tool called Shutup 10. I think it does a pretty good job. I'm not going to bring it up now, but I have a whole other video on that. I think it does a pretty good job, but there's no way to tell for sure. I don't think you can completely shut off Windows 10 telemetry, no matter how hard you try. And you know, that's about it. So this was going to be a technical video where I was actually going to do some of this stuff, but it's just too much. I mean, I'm going to show you how to do it all on Hotmail, but it's not going to translate to Gmail and Yahoo and all the rest of it. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary. I hope this was helpful. This is the absolute state in 2019 in our Orwellian social media, mind control, surveillance state life that we live in. So I would say think long and hard about how much information you're giving up. Being your own little reality TV show on Facebook and Instagram, I don't think is all it's cracked up to be. And I think people are giving up way too much. So that's my own personal thought on it. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think.